The moment he opened his mouth, the entire room changed, and I'm not exaggerating. If you've ever doubted that one voice can stop time, stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happened on that stage didn't just shock the judges, it healed something broken in everyone watching. And before we go any further, if stories like this move you, inspire you, or give you chills, tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss moments like this. Backstage, the lights were harsh and the air smelled like nerves. Mateo Cruz stood alone, clutching a folded piece of paper that had once been his father's. It was old, creased, and soft from years of being unfolded and refolded. Written on it were just a few words: "Sing like you mean it." Mateo read it every time he felt small. Tonight, on the biggest stage of his life, he felt smaller than ever. He was a Filipino immigrant, a warehouse worker by day, a singer only in stolen moments. He had never taken a lesson. Never sung in front of more than a few friends at karaoke nights where people talked over the music and clinked glasses while he poured his heart into songs from another era. His love for Elvis Presley started when he was a boy in the Philippines. His father had an old cassette tape, scratched and warbling, but when Elvis sang, the house felt warmer. When Mateo's father passed away, that music became a bridge to everything he'd lost: home, family, certainty. When he moved abroad to chase a better life, the tape came with him. Singing Elvis wasn't about imitation. It was about survival. The stage manager called his number. Mateo's hands shook as he walked out, the roar of the audience washing over him like a wave he didn't know how to swim through. The judges smiled politely, the way they do when they've seen thousands of hopeful faces. Simon leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, unreadable. Mateo introduced himself, his accent thick, his voice quiet. He said he worked long shifts, that he sang when he missed home. When asked what he would sing, he answered softly, "An Elvis song." There was a pause. A few raised eyebrows. Not because Elvis isn't loved, but because he's been done a lot. Simon's expression said it all, skepticism mixed with boredom. Mateo felt it. He almost changed his song. Almost. Then he remembered the paper in his pocket. The music started. Slow. Familiar. And then Mateo sang. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was controlled, trembling, honest. The kind of voice that doesn't ask for attention but quietly demands it. Within seconds, the chatter in the audience disappeared. His tone carried something deeper than technique: years of sacrifice, loneliness, hope wrapped in melody. When he reached the first chorus, his voice cracked just enough to remind everyone he was human, and somehow that made it perfect. Simon leaned forward. As the song built, Mateo closed his eyes. He wasn't on the AGT stage anymore. He was back in a small living room, barefoot, his father humming along. The notes grew stronger, richer, filling the theater. People in the audience wiped their eyes without realizing when the tears started. One judge pressed a hand to her chest. Another whispered, "Oh my God." Then came the moment no one expected. Mateo changed the phrasing, still Elvis, but also undeniably himself. It was respectful, soulful, new. The crowd erupted mid-song, applause breaking through like thunder. Mateo almost stopped, startled, but he kept going. He sang like this was his only chance to say everything he'd never said. When the final note faded, there was silence. Heavy. Sacred. Then the entire room stood up. Simon didn't clap at first. He just stared. Then slowly, he stood too. Mateo's knees nearly gave out. The feedback came through tears and disbelief. One judge said they forgot where they were. Another said it felt like a prayer. Then Simon spoke. He admitted he hadn't expected much. He said that within 10 seconds, he was wrong. He called it unforgettable. Mateo covered his face and cried, the paper from his pocket finally falling to the stage. But the story didn't end there. Back home, people watched the clip millions of times. Filipino families gathered around screens, proud. Warehouse co-workers replayed it during breaks. Messages poured in from strangers saying, "You sound like my dad," or "You made me feel brave again." Mateo didn't win the whole competition, but he won something bigger. He was seen, heard, believed in. Months later, Mateo stood on a smaller stage at a community concert. No flashing lights. No judges. Just people. Before he sang, he told them something he'd learned, that dreams don't expire, that your voice matters even if the world hasn't listened yet, and that sometimes the song you're afraid to sing is the one that changes everything. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible, remember Mateo. Remember that moment when a Filipino man sang Elvis and proved that belief can shatter expectations. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more moments that remind us who we are. And stay until the end of your own story, because you never know who's waiting to hear your song. The moment the first note left his lips, something invisible but powerful rippled through the theater, like a breath the world had been holding for too long. If you're watching this right now, don't blink, don't scroll away, and don't underestimate what one ordinary man is about to do, because by the end of this story, you might see your own dreams a little differently. And if stories that lift broken hearts and prove miracles still exist mean something to you, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because moments like this deserve to be remembered. Backstage at America's Got Talent, the noise was overwhelming. Voices echoed, heels clicked against the floor, cameras moved like restless eyes. Contestants whispered prayers in different languages, some rehearsed one last time, others stared into nothingness. Mateo Cruz sat on a folding chair in the corner, hands clasped tightly, head bowed. He was 32 years old, but in that moment, he felt like a scared child again. In his pocket was a small, worn-out piece of paper, folded so many times the edges were frayed. It had once belonged to his father. Mateo grew up in a small town in the Philippines where electricity was unreliable and dreams were often postponed. His father worked long hours fixing engines, coming home covered in grease and exhaustion, but every evening, without fail, he would play an old cassette tape. Elvis Presley's voice filled their tiny home, crackling and imperfect, yet magical. Mateo didn't understand English back then, but he understood emotion. He understood pain, love, longing. His father would close his eyes and sing along softly, as if Elvis was telling his own story. When Mateo was 12, his father passed away suddenly. The house became quieter. The music stopped for a while. But one night, unable to sleep, Mateo found the cassette and played it again. That night, he sang for the first time alone. It felt like talking to his father across time. From then on, singing became his secret comfort. Life, however, didn't pause for grief. Mateo grew up fast. He worked odd jobs, helped his mother, and eventually made the painful decision to leave his home country to work abroad. The promise was simple: work harder, earn more, send money home. The reality was brutal. Long shifts, language barriers, loneliness, and the constant feeling of being invisible. In America, Mateo worked in a warehouse where the days blurred together. Boxes in, boxes out. The only color in his routine came during karaoke nights at a small Filipino restaurant on the weekends. People laughed, ate, talked loudly, but sometimes, when the room quieted just a little, Mateo sang Elvis. And for a few minutes, the warehouse worker disappeared, replaced by a man with a story aching to be heard. Friends told him he should audition for America's Got Talent. He laughed it off at first. People like him didn't belong on stages like that. Those shows were for trained performers, confident stars, people without accents. But one night, after a particularly hard shift, Mateo unfolded his father's paper. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, "Sing like you mean it." That was all. No advice about success. No promises. Just truth. So he auditioned. Standing on the AGT stage, under blinding lights, Mateo felt every doubt crash down on him. The audience was massive. The judges were legends. Simon Cowell sat there, expression calm but sharp, a man who had seen dreams rise and fall in minutes. Mateo introduced himself, voice trembling. He spoke about his job, his family, his love for music. When asked what he would sing, he answered honestly, "An Elvis song." The reaction was subtle but clear. A familiar choice. A risky one. Simon leaned back slightly, not impressed, not convinced. Mateo swallowed hard. The music began. The first note was gentle, almost fragile. Mateo didn't try to overpower the room. He let the song breathe. His voice carried warmth, sadness, and restraint. The audience quieted. Conversation stopped. Phones lowered. Something about his tone demanded respect. As he sang, Mateo wasn't thinking about the judges anymore. He was thinking about his father's hands, rough and tired. He was thinking about nights spent missing home, about sacrifices no one applauded. Every lyric meant something personal. Every breath carried memory. Halfway through the song, his voice grew stronger. The emotion rose naturally, not forced, not dramatic. When he reached the chorus, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from truth. The crack landed like a punch to the heart. People felt it. Simon leaned forward. The judges exchanged glances. This wasn't just another cover. This was storytelling. Mateo added subtle changes, respecting the original while making it his own. It felt like Elvis had traveled across time and oceans, picked up new pain, and learned a new language of survival. By the final verse, the audience was already clapping softly, some crying openly. When the last note faded, silence fell, deep, heavy silence. Then the room exploded. The entire audience stood. Cheers thundered. Tears flowed freely. Mateo stood frozen, overwhelmed, hands shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. He covered his mouth, unable to process what was happening. The judges stood too. Simon was the last to speak. He paused, letting the moment settle. Then he admitted what no one expected: he had doubted him. He said he thought it would be just another Elvis impression. But instead, he witnessed honesty. He called Mateo's performance unforgettable. He said it reminded him why music matters. Mateo broke down completely. He advanced in the competition, but the real victory had already happened. His audition went viral overnight. Millions watched. Comments poured in from all over the world. Filipino families cried with pride. Immigrants saw themselves in him. Workers who felt unseen felt validated. People didn't just hear a song, they heard a life. Mateo returned to work briefly after the show. His co-workers treated him differently now, with respect, awe, encouragement. But Mateo himself hadn't changed. He still folded his father's paper. Still sang to remember. As the competition continued, he faced new challenges. Pressure. Expectations. Fear of disappointing those who believed in him. Not every performance was perfect. He didn't always get standing ovations. But he sang honestly every time. In the end, Mateo didn't win the grand prize. Another contestant took the trophy. But when asked how he felt, Mateo smiled through tears. He said winning wasn't the point. Being heard was. Months later, Mateo performed at a small community concert. No judges. No cameras. Just people sitting close together, listening. Before singing, he spoke softly. He said dreams don't belong to the young, the rich, or the fearless. They belong to those brave enough to try. He sang Elvis again that night. And somewhere, in the quiet between notes, a father listened. If you've ever felt like your voice doesn't matter, remember this story. Remember the night a Filipino man sang Elvis and surprised the world. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and never stop believing, because sometimes, all it takes is one song to change everything.